So, hey everyone, welcome to the newest episode of the SaaS Sessions podcast. This is me, Sunil. I'm your host for today. Today, I have Shay Howe. He's a product leader with a design and engineering background. Currently, he's the VP of Design and ActiveCampaign. ActiveCampaign, as you might have all heard of, is one of the fastest growing startups in as per SaaS startups as per G2 crowd. And ActiveCampaign is a marketing automation platform which helps growing businesses meaningfully connect and engage with their customers. So, hey Shay, welcome to the podcast.
Hey, Sunil, thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Awesome. So, is there anything that you want to add to your introduction, Shay, or like maybe spice it up a little?
Yeah, well, I mean, you got it, pretty much nailed it. But yeah, ActiveCampaign, very, very fast growing organization. And yeah, you exactly on the money. We're an automation platform to help deliver ideal customer experiences. So we're helping these growing businesses meaningfully connect and engage with their customers. We focus in a number of different ways to do that. So be it orchestration of different tools and data so that you can build segmentation around those and you can personalize your communications and the experiences you create for those customers, and helping leverage automation to drive all that together. So we do some email marketing, we have a CRM, we support account management, and the bread and butter is automation. And you're exactly right. It's hyper growth on our end. So, getting into the tens of thousands to hundreds of thousands of customers and, hundreds of employees throughout the last few years. So very exciting times.
Yeah, totally. I mean, I think ActiveCampaign is one of the very first few marketing automation companies. So it was started in 2003. I mean, it's been there for 17 years. So you can, imagine how mature the company and the product is, right, in terms of marketing automation.
Yeah. It's been a long time. It might seem like one of those kind of overnight successes, but honestly, kind of anything but. The company's been at this a while. Right. I'd say in the last few years has really found that pace, a strong product market fit, and it's really started to grow. So
right. I mean, it's so old, but it looks and feels so young. The whole company, right?
For sure, yeah. In the product itself is like something we talk about. So, it's been oriented around growing businesses and small businesses at that. So, the way it's been designed, the way it's been thought of and grown has been one to support these businesses and how they onboard, how they implement it, how they get that time to value. And it's been something we talk about that is complete functionality and what they need to do, but it's not complex, right? It doesn't take, 6 weeks of onboarding calls to get up and running with ActiveCampaign, right? You can do that in a matter of minutes and, really start to build some automations and interactions with your customers around it. So it takes a long time to get there, but we have an incredible platform and base there to do that now.
Nice. Pretty much like a self-serve model. But yeah, you would have a lot of, data on, how you have built the product because you took like 17 years, to really, really mature the product. And that's a really good sign as well, right? That means you have like really waited for taking any decisions, and that would show like there should be a lot of data analysis that would go behind, taking any decision that involves in terms of the product, right? So
Absolutely.
talking about design specifically here. So own the design function at ActiveCampaign. So tell us how the design teams are structured.
Yeah. So design at ActiveCampaign consists of four core design teams. One is the product design team. So those are designers that are generalist by nature and sit inside of a cross-functional product or kind of agile team, if you will. So that's a designer that is building out a tight relationship with the product manager, an engineering manager, product marketing manager, and they're focused on a given part of our platform and delivering to the customers around that. That designer is going to do anything from what would be product thinking to interaction design to visual design. Again, a bit of a generalist, if you will.
Right.
Yeah. The other side of design in that is what we call our communication design team. And that's a team that's focused more on the marketing, the communications, the brand, and like the identity side of design. So, tightly related to marketing and the go-to-market teams we have. And that's designing everything from our website into what would be any of the swag or collateral we're putting together for events. It could be our emails, advertisements, you name it. So essentially
Right.
all other functions of what would be considered traditional design is happening there. We have another
So,
team for design
mhm,
systems.
mhm,
That's a team focused on basically how do we develop our style? How do we create a library for that? And how do we make that library a tool used by all other teams in the organization? So that manifests itself inside of an actual code base that's used inside the product, as well as a number of guidelines and assets and libraries for people to get templates of what would be presentations or iconography, other areas. So a team focused on the design systems and operations of design, if you will.
mhm.
And then we have a front end team as well.
Right.
Front end focused on how do we actually build out what is that public facing website and the presence behind all of that. So
Right.
kind of 4 core designed teams within the design org at ActiveCampaign.
Right. So that's like a pretty solid design team
Yeah.
structure there, right? So as a company, it would have obviously spent a lot of time in over design, right? Because that would be the first step in, like, when you're building any product, right? So the user experience that it's kind of creating, right? That, like, the whole design will be something that powers everything.
Yeah.
So like, how do you guys carry out UX research at ActiveCampaign?
Yeah. This is one of the best parts about ActiveCampaign, honestly.
Uh-huh.
I've never worked in an organization with so many sources of feedback. We have such a vibrant customer base and vocal ones at that. So, at ActiveCampaign, we have a plethora of ways to capture feedback. Two of the most ones I spend a lot of time digging into would be what is our net promoter score. So we're surveying users of our platform on a consistent interval, that of which they can provide a numerical rating as well as commentary around that. And
Mm-hmm.
anyone who does that, I get an email around, and I can
Right.
keep tabs and track of that, as well as we pipe a lot of those into a Slack channel
Mm-hmm.
around design specific feedback. So if someone in that commentary provides keywords around design, we
Mm-hmm.
put that in a channel for everyone inside the design org to see and reference. I also look a lot at our churn feedback and surveys. So anytime a customer leaves, I'll get an email around kind of what were their account details and why are they leaving, to try and keep an eye on what that looks like. But those are two signals of many. We have an incredible community. So we have a private Facebook group with well over 10,000 customers in it talking to one
Yeah.
another,
Mm-hmm.
and a source of gold, like just to watch your
Right.
customers talk to one another and help each other
Yeah.
out through different issues.
Totally.
Um,
Mm-hmm.
Incredible. And then as a designer, right, like jumping in there and be like, hey, I have a question. Does anyone have a moment to jump on a call to review some wireframes or a prototype we put together? So we get a lot of feedback from our communities, be it on Facebook, Slack, as well as our own hosted forum. And then digging honestly into review websites too, right? So we take a lot of time to look at how people are talking about us on G2 Crowd, Trustpilot, as
Right.
well as any of the integration websites we have. So, we have an integration with Salesforce, Shopify, elsewhere. So all of those marketplaces collect reviews. So we do a lot to capture and make sure we're keeping a close eye on those. And it keeps going, all through our sales and service teams. The calls are recorded and then analyzed using a tool called Gong. So anyone
Right.
on the design team can go in there and search and say, hey, I'm working on our segmentation builder. So let me keyword search for the word segmentation, and it will
Mm-hmm.
pull up any calls that talk about segmentation. And then it'll
Right.
tell you, was it our team talking about segmentation? Was it the customer? So you can quickly figure that out and then click and dive directly to that point in the conversation to listen to more. We do and it keeps going, right? We do more
Right.
traditional surveys, usability studies elsewhere, to the point, honestly, we have so many signals of feedback. We
Mm-hmm.
built a team called the Customer Experience Advocacy Team. This is the team who's basically listening to all of these different sources of feedback, helping
Mm-hmm.
capture them, identify the themes. They bundle that up, right? And they're continually disseminating the knowledge of what they're learning through all those sources.
Mm-hmm.
It's just an incredible, incredible team to have, so that you always kind of know the heart and pulse of the customer base.
That's such a beautiful culture there, right? It's so great that your customers can directly talk to your team, and your team can directly get in touch with your customers through that community on Facebook. I mean, that's a really gold mine out there for you guys.
Yeah.
So with
It's
so. Mhm.
Yeah, I was gonna say, like, it's, I've worked in other orgs where it's like, it's honestly hard to get a hold of your customers sometimes.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Who you sold to might not actually be the person using the product.
Right.
Uh, you got to go through these gates. We don't have that problem whatsoever. The people are there, they're very accessible, and frankly, they're excited and happy to talk to us. So it's a luxury, frankly.
Yeah, and it's a win-win for both of them. I mean, they also trust that people from your team is going to be there if something goes down, or if they are facing a problem with anything that they can't do themselves, and need your team to jump in to help them. I mean, it's a
Yep.
win-win for your customers and as well as for you guys, which makes me curious about so many sources of data, right? So many sources of feedback, and it would vary also, right? Because each customer would think how to use ActiveCampaign best for their business, right? So everyone will
Mhm.
tailor it according to them. So so will their feedback also be tailored according to their needs and how they're using ActiveCampaign. So how do you prioritize on what feedbacks to listen to and what should convert from a feedback into an action item? So how do you probably pick a needle from the haystack?
Yeah. Oh shoot, such a challenge, honestly.
Yeah.
Um, it's a mix, right? You have all of that data coming in. A lot of people kind of pride themselves on being data driven. Um, I'm honestly more interested in being data influenced. I think data is an incredible signal for you, but it
Hmm.
doesn't inherently answer why. And
Hmm.
why has to come from a conversation and dialogue, I think, with that customer. So for us, it's always pairing, what is the quantitative and qualitative feedback signals we can get to really understand where is the largest opportunity, and also just like mirroring that against our industry, and where technology is essentially growing and allowing us to solve problems in more meaningful ways. And where can we essentially use that technology to create a better user experience that hasn't historically been possible, right?
Right. Hmm.
And as we get down into like the prioritization of that, it's starting to really understand what in that matrix is going to have the largest impact, yet often require the least amount of effort. And maybe you're familiar, there's a model called RICE. So it's basically how do
Hmm.
you
Yeah.
measure reach, impact, and confidence of something,
Mhm.
and then basically divide that by the effort it would take to get that done. And that
Right.
kind of tells you where to prioritize. So, in so many ways, we kind of look at that, right? What is the impact of this? What is the reach of it? What's our confidence that this is the right thing to do? And
Mhm.
what's the effort to it? And that kind of
Right.
allows us to put things in a different lens to prioritize.
Totally. So you use the right framework to kind of prioritize what from all these sources of feedback, which to turn into an actionable item for the product.
Yep, you got it.
So so it would involve a lot of data. So there must be some calculation that is going on in determining what's the reach of this or what's the impact of this, right? And how many efforts you want to put. So in all those levels, you would be tracking a lot of data, right? So and
Mhm.
this thing which is really kicking up or it's really trending in terms of design as well, right? So data for design, right? So what is your take on that?
Yeah. Well, so you have all the data of the front of that, right? So
Right.
those are all basically signals that are providing direction. When you get into the design side, much more about learning, are you on the right course then too, right? So as you're
Hmm.
making any optimizations, what data do you look at? How do you actually start to quantify like you're on the right track? So for us, it's a matter of, before we dig into a project, understanding what's the goal and what would
Hmm.
be a signal of a positive outcome here, and can we measure ourselves against that. So that can manifest itself in different types of data too, right? So again, wanting to make sure you're pairing the qualitative with the quantitative side. We'll set up Pendo or Google Analytics to make sure we're getting a healthy number of events and analytics around that, as well as looking at like our own databases and the platform for the
Hmm.
usage end of that statistics, right? We essentially ETL all that into Snowflake, and then we put Looker on top of that to basically start to build out views and dashboards and reports of what we're building. And oftentimes we make that an exercise before we do the actual design or development, right? So we'll
Hmm.
say like, hey, put this into a dashboard. What would you need to see? What are the metrics you're going to monitor? How would you actually start to peel back the layers of that? And doing that up front changes the conversation a bit, right? And keeps
Right.
you true and honest as you start to design and develop what you're building. Um,
Right. So I mean, even design can have data, right? So
Yeah.
what would be those design metrics that you're tracking? Like,
Yeah. So for me, like design fundamentally is oriented around solving a problem. Very rarely would we go somewhere just to see how something looks or to be excited that it's a clean looking website or interface, right? We're going somewhere to do something. We have a job we want done, something we're
mhm,
trying to accomplish. So, the metrics on design are the ones we're thinking about, and how are we making that job easier to do, and what would
mhm,
signal that, and pairing that against like what is the value or benefit to our business. So,
right.
if you're on kind of that the acquisition side of the business, it's going to be largely around conversion rate, right? So what draw out the funnel from email sent to open to clicked to website visit to actual capture of a contact information or interest, down into what is the percentage that a deal is created off of that, to
Mhm,
the deal is closed, what is the average deal size, and like there are things you can do in the design to
right.
play with that, right?
Mhm,
So do you get people to sign up in higher plan tiers? So are they
mhm,
coming in on what would be a plus or pro plan versus one of the lighter plan tiers? Is someone signing up for an annual subscription versus a monthly subscription?
right.
So it kind of depends on what you're looking at there. The opposite side of that, like in the product side, you're probably looking at what is the adoption of a given product or feature. So if you're rolling out a new product,
Mhm,
are people using it? Are they abandoning it? Do you have what would be a happy path of using that product, and what are the increments of that flow? And are people dropping off by certain percentages at different flows? And what percentage of people get to complete those? What then becomes the NPS of accounts that use those features versus not? What is the
right.
ACP of accounts who use those versus not? What is the churn rate of accounts who use that or
Mhm,
not? Right. So
yeah.
um, so many different ways you can kind of split and slice the data. But
Mhm,
again, kind of going back to what's the problem you're trying to solve, or what's the goal, and
mhm.
making sure you kind of identify that up front, build out your reporting, and then dig in from there.
Totally. And I mean, so do you guys, if you guys are tracking so much of data, right, and going so deep into the research of tracking data as well, so do you guys associate any, design metrics for growth as well? Like, are you associating growth to design as well? Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, like design to me is kind of a team sport. So very rarely will you hear me say like, "Oh, design did this and we accomplished that." It'd be the team did this, and
Yeah.
that's done in partnership with what would be marketing, product engineering,
Right.
and others. But certainly, like design digs in, right? So our entire onboarding flow, design has played a large part in understanding what's the conversion optimization of how that works. We have an entire product team focused on customer journey and product onboarding. You know, thinking about those optimizations of how do we get people to adopt this, how do we
Mhm.
drive more conversion optimization around this. So kind of deep into the weeds of that. And then also we are a product led company, customer
Right.
oriented, customer focused, but
Yeah.
we do borrow a lot of what is kind of that product led growth methodology. So
Mhm.
emails sent with ActiveCampaign, depending on your tier, might say, email sent with ActiveCampaign in it, right? So the product begins to promote itself.
Uh-huh.
You might see subscription forms on websites that say marketing by ActiveCampaign, or you might
Uh-huh.
see our live chat on a website that says conversations by ActiveCampaign, right? So an example of where we're using some product-led growth to help drive and create, a bit of a flywheel as well as a hook into using the product to fundamentally grow itself, if that makes sense. And
Yeah, totally.
that's part of the design conversation.
Yeah, totally. I mean, so product-led growth is like, such a trending topic since a couple of years. I mean, like a lot of startups are focusing on that because they realize that it's important to take the user, like to focus your growth in towards like, how users are using the products and, doing stuff what they want. So
Yeah.
putting them onto the center, right? Because it's at the end, customer use who's, or the user who's using the product, right? And not your product managers or product designers who are going to use the product. Mm.
Yep. Yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
yeah, Yeah, so I think we have reached the course here, and I have a few lightning questions or rapid fire questions. Shay, are you ready?
I think so. Let's see how it goes.
Yeah, awesome. So yeah, so let me start. So what do you know about your work now that you wish you'd have known when you first started?
Oh, that there's not a right answer, right? That things inherently, generally aren't binary. It's often not true or false. It's somewhere in the middle with many signals of what could be a good answer. So don't focus on finding, absolute truth. Focus on learning, growing, and having good signals there within.
Totally. And yeah, so what did your biggest professional failure teach you?
Ooh, more empathy, honestly. I like my drivers are around essentially achievement and control. That doesn't always lean itself well into being a great leader and leading a strong team. So practicing empathy with those you're helping lead, understanding that your story and the experiences you have are different from others, and that you have to see the world from other perspectives and opinions and not hold on to yours so tightly in that scenario.
Right. And what's the number one thing that has helped you to shorten your craft learning curve?
Ooh, I am a very kinesthetic learner. I have to get my
Mhm.
hands on something.
Yeah.
I love to read. I like devour books left and right. Those are essentially just kind of like the kindling, right? They get some of my learning started, but really digging in. So
Right.
I'd say the ability and time I spent in creating a community of mentors, working on side projects. That's been just substantial in what I've learned and kind of how I've grown.
Right. And what's your parting piece of advice to anyone who is listening right now? Like, what are maybe two or three actionable items that you can give them that they can, go and implement?
Ooh, like I've been doing this a while, and I think I have a lot of empathy for people starting today. I think there are just a ton of resources and tools and ways to like learn and grow and educate.
Uh-huh.
But that's also a bit of decision paralysis. Like you don't know what's good, you don't know what's
Right.
quality, you don't know where to get started. Right? Like you start googling
Mhm.
these things, and you can get in a
Yeah.
rabbit hole quickly. So I tell people just focus on momentum, like learning and growing through that. Small progress is good progress, right? And
Right. Totally.
oftentimes like it's the person who gets on base, who has the RBIs, who is solidly always contributing, that makes a larger difference versus someone who comes in and hits the grand slam, right? um,
Totally.
so if you're growing and you have momentum around that, be comfortable with that.
Yeah.
And that's a good thing.
Yep.
I don't know,
And
that's where I orient myself. Yeah.
yeah, and even so, according to me, what I think is like, the process is more important than the goal, right? So
Mm,
whenever you start, whatever you start, if you're in the process, when you're doing it, that's more important, that's more exciting than, hitting the goal. It's
yeah.
what I think in this.
Yeah.
And yeah, and definitely in terms of, coming back to, you mentioned that, there are a lot of tools which would people would need, to get started in anything. So a little piece that I would, give back on behalf of Active Campaign is, so I know that Active Campaign has a lot of free tools that you can use to get started. I stumbled it up on its website, long back when it got added. I found it in some Slack community. So the website has, subject line generators, webinar templates, and like, CRM templates, and you can, create a buyer persona, create a social media calendar, and lot, I mean. So you can just go and download these, and these are freely available, I mean. So
Yeah.
that's something that
Yeah.
everyone can, make use of.
We have an incredible content and education team. So, yeah,
Mhm.
you're absolutely right. We have a number of free tools out there to help folks get
Mhm.
started, as well as an entire education center. And
Right.
an education center that covers not only how to use ActiveCampaign, but how to build, ideal customer experiences. So, how do you become a good sales rep? How do you become a good marketer? How do you actually deliver these experiences? So, yeah,
Totally.
certainly plethora of tools in there. I think it's activecampaign.com/learn. We'll take you over to the education center with a lot of different resources and tools in there.
Great. I'll make sure to include a link in the description. So yeah,
Awesome.
so thanks a lot, Shay. I mean, this was very interesting.
Yeah, likewise. Thank you for having me, Sunil. I appreciate it.